It's Del K. Burton, and this is The Real Spiel. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have a conversation about an ancient individual by the name of Mephibosheth? Have you ever heard of this guy? Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth is the most famous paraplegic in the Bible. That's right. He was lame, the Bible says, in his feet. He was lame in his feet. Let me give you a little bit of his story, and let me tell you why I wanted to talk about him today. Mephibosheth comes from a royal family in the antiquity of Israel. The first king of Israel, his name was Saul. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. And God sent a prophet to test him and to cause him to be king. And his reign was dubious. For those who know the story, his greatest arch nemesis was a gentleman name interpreted as well beloved. His name is David. And David became the son-in-law of the king by killing this 9-foot giant and marrying the king's daughter. And in the process of time, David developed a great relationship with the king's son. His name was Jonathan. And so in the course of time, where David and the king Saul, fell out, the relationship broke into pieces, and things happened, there was essentially an overthrow. And during the portion of this overthrow, they decided to evacuate the descendants of Saul, namely his grandson, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth at the time was a child. And one of the nurses, they referred to it as the Bible, or his caregiver, picked him up to run with him. And she dropped him. And apparently it affected him for the rest of his life. Probably some type of spinal injury. And it caused him to be lame. And still, she ran away with him. And she hid him away in an area that was referred to as Lodebar. Lodebar. And I believe when you look into the interpretation of Lodebar, it's essentially, and this is a paraphrase, nothing good can happen here. It was that type of place. It was a place where basically nothing good could happen here. He lived in a place called nothing good can happen here. He was of royal lineage, and out of circumstances that were out of his control, he was both ripped away from his actual inheritance and maimed for life, and then set to live in a place called nothing good can happen here. Oof. Now that's a bad story. That's a very, very bad story. It's a child who has, no capacity to affect his surroundings, his circumstances. Everybody made decisions for him, and all these decisions turned negatively against him. And I would assume, with this young man living, again, hiding in somebody else's place, he's a, what would I call him? He's a political refugee. He is fearful for his life. He grows up under the fear of reprisal because his father was the enemy of the current pontiff, who is now David. And he's keeping his head very, very low. And not only that, he's suffering from the fact that he is, again, paraplegic. His name, again, is Mephibosheth. And it speaks to, I think, sometimes the circumstances of generations who have inherited the destitution of their ancestors. Mephibosheth comes from a very royal line, comes from kings. He descends from kings. And even though he had to flee for his life, and people who cared for him along the course of his life, they still dropped him. Have you ever lived through something in life where people simply just dropped you? Yeah, they tried. Yeah, they attempted, but they dropped you. And when they dropped you, it broke you. It broke you forever. It broke you to the place where emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you begin to live in a place called nothing good can happen here. Excuse me. You look around at your life and you don't see any inheritance. You don't see anything that belongs to you. You want to have your own person. You want to have your own house. You want to have your own business. You want to have your own ministry. You want to have your own nation. You want to even have your own identity. You can't even disclose that. Nothing good happens here. And many of us are living out that inheritance because our true inheritance is gone. Somebody else is living in it. Somebody else has absconded with it. Somebody in our past has mishandled it. And we are in survival mode in Lodebar. In Lodebar. It's not a great place to be. But something happens. I'm speaking to every Mephibosheth out there. Something happens. God reaches down from the place of infinity and he touches the heart of someone who has the capacity and the reach and the aptitude to change your life. In this story, God reaches out to David, not speaking into his ear, not sending a prophet to give him instruction, but just the inspiration of the change of heart. And David remembers his friend, Jonathan, the son of Saul. And the relationship with Jonathan and the love he has for Jonathan outweighs the negative relationship he had with Jonathan's father. And he says, because of Jonathan, I want to find someone who is still living, because Jonathan is dead and so is his father. I want to find someone who is still living, who I can bless, who I can do something for, who I can reach out to and change their life. There is a generational blessing attached to you by your ancestors. Your ancestors who loved God. Your ancestors who said to themselves, I will be a friend of God. There was a relationship that was made in antiquity, and a blessing and a reward that's trying to reach you right now. So you sitting there in Lodebar, don't eat your bitter grits, and don't hang your head too low, because God is inspiring somebody's heart for you right now. And David goes and finds a man by the name of Ziba. Ziba's got about 18 sons. And Ziba is literally living in Jonathan's inheritance. And David says, listen, Ziba, is there any descendants of Jonathan that are still alive? Ziba is not quick. He's not slow to answer. He says there's still one. Now, I don't know what Ziba's motive is. Is it to say, hey, let me give this guy up because then I can inherit all his stuff? Or is it to really say, hey, you know what? I got to be honest, and I got to tell the king the truth. I'm not sure of his intentions 100%. But at the end of the day, Ziba goes and finds Jonathan and says, hey, David is looking for you. He goes and finds Mephibosheth and says, David is looking for you. Jonathan's son, lame in his feet. Everything in his life has affected him. His walk has been affected, dropped by his past, dropped and broken. But the king is calling you. And Ziba goes and brings this gentleman and presents him, and Mephibosheth doesn't know if he's going to get killed. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him. He says, Lord, what will you have of me? He says, are you a descendant of Jonathan? He goes, yes, I'm his son. He said, from henceforth, you will always sit at my table. I'm letting somebody know right now, the people who have been living out their life in Lodebar, the people who have been dropped, the people who have been broken, the people who have looked around and said, there's nothing good that can happen here, that God has a plan to set you at the king's table. God has a plan. God, just speak to yourself and say, God has a plan to set me at the king's table. And he looks at Ziba and he says, Ziba, I'm not even going to displace you. Your 18 sons, this is what you guys are going to do. You guys are going to work the land for this man here. You're going to take care of his land. You're going to make sure it's well kept. You're going to bring in the fruits. You're going to make sure nothing's missing out of his household. You're going to clean it. You're going to take care of him. But he shall always sit at my table. Man, when God gets ready to bless you, everything connected to you, everything around you is going to change. Even the things that you think are permanently broken, God's going to make a way to make sure he wheels you right up to the table. And I'll say this, and I'll close here. Some of us have been the nurse. I know I have. I've dropped some people. I've messed some stuff up in my past. And some people are remained broken. And it's something, sometimes you look at it and you say, you know, I don't know how I'm going to forgive myself for doing that. Even that nurse who dropped that little boy, God had a way of retribution and said, baby, you dropped him, but I caught him. It's okay. Some of you need to forgive yourselves because you are the people that dropped others. You're the people that caused other people to be broken. But no matter what, all of us are coming out of Lodebar. Because if nothing good can live here, I can't live here either. God bless you. This is Del K. Burton. This is The Real Spiel. You are Mephibosheth. You're coming out of Lodebar today.